think we are live. Welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Scholar Gypsies. Once again, I'm doing a live stream and I'm delighted today to have Dr. Anne McCloskey back on the Scholar Gypsies. Dr. Anne is running as an independent candidate in the local elections down here in the south in Lifford, Stranraer, I think. She's also been high profile in the fight against the whole COVID narratives, the vaccine narratives. We're going to get into her struggles and her fights against the General Medical Council in the UK and a range of other stuff. I just want to say one of the things I really admire about Anne is throughout her life and career, she has been she's the person that puts her foot forward and her reputation on the line on the things she really believes in. And I want to get into that and a little bit about her faith, because I know that's hugely important to her as well. So without further ado, welcome Anne, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jerry. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm a Mutual Appreciation Society. I'm a big fan of your work and enjoy your writing very much. I'm laughing because I wrote an article on bluebells there. The bluebells are out in the garden and I am freezing. I can't get heated. I wish this global boiling would come to Derry. It would be really good. I just need to correct you slightly, Jerry, in your intro. I'm actually standing for the Letterkenny district.
Oh, it's Letterkenny, sorry.
Yeah, the thing about the Irish people is that we were looking for candidates in each sort of constituency across the country to give people that choice of something outside of the uni party. But we were sort of saying where there is a credible candidate, that's not a priority, and we have a very credible candidate in Stranraer Ballybuffet. So I moved over to Letterkenny, which actually suits me better because I spend a lot of time in West Donegal, and it's a scoot down the road. So it's an area that I know quite a bit about.
How have you been? I know you're bit. We're going to get into the your fight really with the General Medical Council. But how have you found, campaigning and issues on the ground in Donegal? I look at Donegal as kind of the one county in Ireland that is always kind of you can rely on to kind of stand up and be counted. How have you found campaigning so far in terms of the local elections?
Well, I'm afraid to tell you that I haven't actually managed to do a lot of actual sort of canvassing and stuff like that. A lot of this, will be kind of online. I'm hoping to get to any hustings and that are on. I'm very happy to speak to any of the local radio stations, and I will get door to door. But as I say, the Medical Practitioners Tribunal had a week-long hearing about me last week. So I've just been up to my eyes doing paperwork for that. I didn't go because the thing is a nullity. It's a void from the start. It's these are criminal. It's reached the level of criminality at this stage. But we still have to keep putting in paperwork and challenging these people. So I haven't been doing a lot of door-to-door stuff. Funny, just before I came on here, I was looking at one of the local lads in Buncrana, Kim McMenamin, has done a leaflet. There's generic leaflets. I was down in Athlone there on Saturday, meeting some of the other candidates, and we had just some really wonderful conversations about, just our hopes and our fears, I suppose, for our beautiful homeland here. And very good presentations from a young fella called Kevin, who has a website called, let me get this right, the Brehon Academy, which is stunning. But he was talking about, connecting and, giving us a wee tutorial on canvassing and that. So I'm hoping to hit the streets. Well, if it would stop raining, if it would stop hailstoning, it would be good, yeah. But I'm hoping to get out and meet a few people. I was in Letterkenny canvassing for the referendums. Myself and my brother spent 2 Saturdays leafleting the town. But as I say, Donegal is the only county in Ireland that Donegal, the pride of all, we call it. Derry is, of course, the capital of Donegal, kind of. The actual city of Derry is in Donegal, but the border was drawn around it in order, at the time of the boundary commission and that, the border that doesn't really exist. So nominally Derry's in the north, but it is actually geographically and spiritually a part of Donegal. And as I say, in the 8th referendum, Donegal was the only county that didn't listen to the likes of Kitty Holland's propaganda and the Savita yarn and all of that, and voted to preserve the life of our precious next generation. And they gave the government a good walloping in the referendums. I think Donegal was over 80% told them
It
what
was
to
the
do with
highest in
it.
the country, yeah.
Yeah. But as I say, no surprise. And I do think that the people there are highly well informed. Donegal has been neglected by the Dublin cabal for since the setup of the Free State, or the 26 counties, or whatever you want to call it. And it's peripheral, and it's a kind of a law unto itself, which is wonderful. I'm not an anarchist, but I do like small government, and I definitely think that there's that spirit is in the people of the West. So it's I'm not doing this because I want to get elected. I absolutely hate that. I was elected, as you know, to Derry and Strabane District Council. I had to resign whenever COVID came because I was a member of a party. I was elected as an N2 councillor, and I was deputy leader and 6th county director. And I had to resign because I couldn't speak as a member of a political party. So at least in the Irish people, this isn't a party, it's a coalition of independents. And it's organised as a group just for administrative purposes, so that we share posters and but we have been assured that we have autonomy and can just you're, as an independent, you're responsible only to yourself and to the people you want to vote for you. You don't have to take anything else into account. And it's the only way forward, I believe, in politics. If you look at the MEPs and the people in this country even who've made a difference over the last 4 years, the vast majority of them are outside the party system. Party work
Yeah,
is
yeah. Like there's a number of independent groupings that are kind of organizing themselves at the moment, and one of the worries I have is that they'll start getting in each other's like that they don't get in each other's way. And like a good example for me of that is John Waters running as an MEP, and there's not just the Irish People Party, but the Independents Ireland are running an MEP candidate. And my worry, well, where I would get upset is if, like, to me, John is, for the last 4 years, similar to yourself, one of our, one of the authentic voices with integrity that you could rely on to kind of comment and, stand up for what was right. And he's very similar to you in that kind of nature. And that's where I kind of worry about the future, is that
I couldn't agree more. John Waters is the best thing we have in this island in terms of understanding and having researched and just the way he can communicate, his command of language. He's just wonderful. I've read everything that he's ever written. I read his Substack, and you look at it and you go, oh my God, that's going to take at least an hour. And it's always worth it. He's great. And I did have that conversation with people in the Irish people at the weekend. I did express my views fairly robustly that John requires support, not opposition. And I kind of understand. Well, first of all, they're thinking, they're hoping, I sincerely hope they're correct, that there's a possibility of more than one, counter narrative person getting elected. I suspect that may be optimistic.
very.
Yeah. It's just we live in very, very strange times, Jerry.
We
I
do.
my personal, and I'm not remotely afraid of saying this. My personal wish would be that John would get a clear run at it, and I've
Yeah.
shared that. Now I'm not in control over who
Yeah,
or
yeah,
let's
yeah. No, no,
stand.
no. Like, it's a good example that you're in the the grouping's independent enough that you can say stuff like that without fear of you know retribution or whatever. Like, to be honest with you, I've more like the independent Ireland group is one I have as much, if not more, concern about, because they seem to be following a very similar playbook and candidate selection as mainstream parties, like plumping for an ex-RTE journalist. And as much as Niall Boylan is, you know, kind of swimming against the stream for the last year in terms of his output on his radio station. I remember, and you remember, the people who stood up when the fire was the hottest, and you were one of those people, and John was one of those people. So I have
Totally.
I
Yeah.
have a very
Yeah. Long,
um
long memory. Yeah, but no,
yeah, well,
you're absolutely correct. Yeah, yeah. And the information was there from the start
hmm,
for anybody who cared to look, anybody who did even rudimentary research. I went in. I was in the council in the spring of 2020, and they were having a special meeting of Derry and Strabane District Council about should we cancel the St. Patrick's Day parade. So I went along to this meeting, buzzing. I was going, I'm the only doctor, I'm the only scientist, I have the data. This is. Look, listen, lads. The St. Patrick's Day parade can go ahead. There's no problem. The average age of death from this is 84. It's older than the average age of death all cause. That there's no issue here. Young people aren't at risk. Diamond Princess data, Johnny Anidis's data, Michael Levitt's data had all that. And it wasn't even that anybody was arguing with me, just the heads went down because they had read the playbook. My impression I got was that these people already knew pretty much what was going to roll out. And there were some there going, and then there was council meetings afterwards. We were still in the chamber, for a week or so after that, and it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Do you remember that? And then it was, meetings from home, and then whenever I started, and again I was listening and reading the papers around these mRNA technologies, and these things had been tried before and it was decided that they were unfit for human use because they were too dangerous. These things, there were papers written a decade ago where these were trialed on animals and it didn't go well, and
hmm.
here all of a sudden they've been ruled out. And at that stage I was watching people like Professor Dolores Cahill, who was a clear and coherent and authoritative voice on the dangers of these. And even I then at that time as a doctor knew that these things had not been trialed in the way that it was a mass medication, which was essentially experimental. And we know now that things haven't worked out well.
Well,
And
there's been a lot of like in Ireland, we'll say there's been a lot of people trying to bring attention to this. We'll say, like Louise Rosengrave, even
yeah,
Ashleen O'Loughlin, and especially Patrick E. Walsh, and people like that. Where do you think we are in the? Do you think we're near getting accountability for the whole COVID era?
no,
Um,
no, I think they have to double down. They have absolutely no alternative. The COVID inquiry is coming to Belfast. I hear starting tomorrow. But I mean, the premise of the COVID inquiry in England was everything we did was right. We just didn't do it hard enough, soon enough, and we should have done more. And even now, in the face of the overwhelming evidence of the harms done, particularly to children and young people, and the health service, and so the assumption of these inquiries and that is that no, it was great, and we're still seeing the safe and effective narrative. They have to double down because they are guilty of culpable manslaughter, of genocide. And this is it. These things are experimental, unlicensed, injectable toxins, bioweapons. they fit and I've been following the work of Sasha Latipova, and the, the, Catherine Watts is another. She's a researcher in law, and these are American people. But even here locally, I mean, there is no doubt. And Patrick Walsh's work has been phenomenal in terms of the boring work of sitting down, looking at the numbers, analyzing, looking at the data, following it over years. And what he has shown is that, and I hope I get this right now, I think in 31 of the 32 months, the last 32 months, there's been excess deaths in Ireland. Peaked in, I think, July 2021, but it's been more than 10%. At 17,500 excess deaths, which is shocking. That's the population of a town. And the really concerning thing is that the younger age groups are disproportionately represented in that cohort, because young people don't die. If you make your second birthday, you're likely to make it until you're 65. Because the things that young people die of are car accidents and drownings, these things that are quite rare. It's unusual for young people to die from heart disease, from cancer, from strokes. And as I say, doctors are baffled, I hear.
Well, we're seeing that, but I think there's an unease, and it's grown in the general population, and you see you see little flurries of it, even in our health system seems like a almost, I think it was referred to recently as a death trap, and that was in a mainstream thing to do with the death of that Aoife Johnson. But when you see a health service where it's almost like a bomb site when you go into it, and 15-minute protocols are not followed until 15, 16 hours,
Yeah.
like on the sepsis thing. And then you see a government. I was driving my car yesterday, and I was trying to think, will I write about this or will I not? And I says there's a lot written about it. And then I turn on my radio, and there's an advertisement from the HSC about sepsis, and it was like, don't be afraid to say that you might have sepsis. Like, and I'm like, are you what, you want the patients to kind of self-diagnose in the emergency room? But it's like a subliminal cover up, like they're on top of these things, and they clearly are not. Like,
Well, as I say, I worked in the NHS for 40 years, and during my time there, particularly over the last 20 years, I worked as a GP for 30 of those 40 years. I trained in pediatrics, and I watched the dismantling and the debasing of what was at one time a service which served people. And certainly from Tony Blair's new contract and all of that, it went from being patient centered to being protocol driven, and driven by targets, which meant more drugs, more money, so that, and the way even the GPs were funded, it used to be that you were funded per capita, which is reasonable. And so that if you're rubbish and aren't doing your work, the patients won't come to you, so you don't get paid. And then that all changed. And as I say, up to 70% of income now was derived from hitting these targets, and the big one, the vaccination targets and stuff like that. So there was an incentive for doctors to do away with informed consent, if you like, and just push patients in a certain direction. And I objected to this for decades. Uh, but recent, for example, now that, I mean, I went back to work at the beginning of COVID, because for the first month or so, I sort of thought, there's something going on here, and I
and
went back
and
to.
and you, and you can make I can make allowances for our government for the first 3 months of COVID, like in terms of not being quite sure, and stuff like
I
that for the
wouldn't
first
even
couple
give
of
them
months.
that. No,
But
no.
like,
Sorry, no,
well,
no. I
what I
well,
what I would say, no, like I can accept what you're saying, but what I can say is, if they were genuinely not sure what it was, they had a couple of months where you could say, okay, maybe they didn't know. But like, we had 2 more years of that after,
yeah.
the initial wave, we'll say, put it like that.
yeah.
So, and
But Jerry,
plenty
there,
of data.
it's important that people understand that nothing happened.
Hmm.
In no country across this planet was there a statistically significant increase in age standardized all cause mortality in the spring of 2020. Old people died. People were PCR tests out of existence and therefore labeled as having a disease. So that if you got run down by a steamroller and had a positive PCR test, a friend of mine, I've just been talking to her earlier on this afternoon, was a nurse, and she was sent in the hospital that she worked in, an NHS hospital, to swab, to do a PCR test on the remains, the dead body of a young woman who had hung herself at home. And she refused to do it. And the senior nurse says, well, you have to do it. And she says, I'm not doing it. And she said, it'll be a disciplinary offence. And my friend said, discipline away, it's not happening. So the senior nurse or nurse manager or whatever went and did the test herself. Now, I don't know the end of the story, whether it was positive or negative, but if it was positive, then that is very likely to have been attributed to being a cause. It's scandalous what went on. And the genocide, again, the protocols which were designed, which have all vanished off the internet now, but they were designed to end the lives of our frail elderly in nursing homes, under the pretext that there was the hospitals were overrun. I worked a session in the local GP COVID assessment centre. I don't think they'd let me back again, Jerry, if they had to do it again. There were 3 doctors, 7 or 8 nurses, admin staff, porters, the whole plant, in the outpatient department of our local district general hospital, which was empty. And we saw 3 patients in 4 hours. 3 patients, none of whom had COVID. One was a man who'd bought a SATS monitor, an oxygen saturation monitor off the internet. And I think he hadn't the batteries in properly, thought he was dying. But in the meantime, that's bad. But the problem is that outpatients department of a hospital should have had a throughput of 300 or 400 people getting their real life problems sorted out. Kidney problems, diabetes, eye problems, ENT, neurology, all of those outpatients were cancelled. And people were just left to get on with it. And whenever you did a house call to somebody, the first thing they said was, Doctor, I am not going into hospital. I don't want to die on my own. And even people that had completely treatable things were just, they did not want to go in because they knew that they wouldn't see their loved ones again if they were sick. And you'd say, look, it's only, you've a kidney infection, you need IVs for a day or two, and you'll be grand. No, leave me at home. Give me something I can take at home. It was tragic, truly tragic to watch the way people were utterly abandoned. And even now, it's hard to understand how people went along with it, but they did. It was the biggest psychological operation ever carried out against the human race. I mean, unbelievable.
Let me just ask you a question, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'd be interested to know if you've any thoughts on it. I've heard a lot in the UK, the US about, medication protocols like midazolam. Do we have evidence of that in either Northern Ireland or the Republic, where medication protocols to nursing homes were changed in those weeks, and if so, where are they?
Well, I have downloaded the protocols that have since vanished. I have them printed out. To give somebody who's short of breath and having difficulty breathing for whatever cause, a respiratory depressant and sedatives is tantamount to giving them a poison. You need, when you're not well, you need to be coughing, you need to be breathing, you need to be using your muscles, you need to be fighting, to keep yourself oxygenated. The last thing you need is midazolam. And I'm not against drugs being used in terminal care for people who are absolutely terminally ill to reduce anxiety and to help them. But these people weren't being given antibiotics for pneumonia because, it was a viral pneumonia and antibiotics don't work. Nonsense, utter nonsense. and I'm talking to people frequently, and I've gone through hospital notes for people. And to me, it's absolutely clear that if their loved one hadn't gone into hospital, they would be alive. You know, people who went in with relatively minor problems. And I mean, there was one particularly horrific story I dealt with recently where they saw the gentleman in question was in his 80s, sprightly, living at home, you know, two-story house, caring for himself, and he had a fall. And he saw a palliative care specialist in accident and emergency. The palliative care person came to assess him. Now, what? You know, it just, and it was difficult. You know, the thing about it was that people weren't getting access. And, you know, it seems that particularly in the west of Ireland, some of these protocols were shall we say, enthusiastically implemented with very little oversight. Um,
And just like if we allow, like if we assume, and it's a big assumption, that people in our health service did this, why did they do this? Why did they implement protocols like that that would that surely should go against the grain of their training, of their practices, medical professions? Like that seems so nonsensical.
I couldn't answer that question. I think it's the old story about nobody sees the full picture. You know, people were being told that this was a dreadful disease and that it had a huge mortality and that antibiotics didn't help and that, you know, that you know, just these are the protocols. I mean, the people who devised these protocols should certainly be in jail. You know, they should certainly be in jail. They need to be held accountable. And we hear a lot of talk about Nuremberg too, but as we know, the Nuremberg trials let an awful lot of people who were culpable out the back door. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, what went on was, to me, you know, and I think when the thing was so clear, I, I, I'm, I don't want to be unkind to other members of my profession, but to me, it's incomprehensible that they didn't know what was going on. Now, I wrote to all the local GPs when I was in the council. This is way back in the spring of the summer maybe of 2020, to all of the MLAs. So I was sending links to people and asking them to look at it. Not one of them responded to me. Not one said, "And you're nuts because, you know, let's have a conversation." Just blank, blank. There were one or two who got back to me and said, "Don't contact me again." Most of them just ignored it. Again, the Michael McBride, the Minister for Health, the Chief Medical Officer, I beg your pardon, who was the person who reported me to the General Medical Council when I made the video calling out what I was seeing in my clinical practice at that time and my special concern for the damage these things were causing to young people. When I made that video, it was our chief medical officer at 11 o'clock that night, quarter past
Mhm.
11, who emailed and to the GMC and to the local, you know, sort of GP gurus and. You know, so that was the moving party, wasn't a patient. There was no, and they've admitted that I had a 40-year unblemished career and didn't cause harm to anybody. But the reason that what happened to me happened was to tell other doctors, don't even think about speaking. Do not even think about it. And as I say, I've been in touch with people like Dr. Malik, Ahmed Malik, and see, I'm an old woman. I'm a mammy and I'm a granny, and I sort of retired anyway, and I've my pension gotten spent, and there's not a whole lot they can do to me. So I've no fear of them. And that's why I think if they had to do it again, they will not be looking for retired doctors to go back on the front line, you know. I think
Yeah.
if they had to do it again, they probably would have let me rant on and hope that it would sort of burn itself out. But as I say, it's you know, people like Dr. Malik and Dave Cartland have young families, mortgages, all of that. And so, as I say, that this is an effective weapon And I absolutely get it that people are terrified. Should they speak out? Yes. And I think if 100 doctors spoke out tomorrow, there'd be 1,000 the next day. Do you know what I mean? If there was that, if people just said, right, it's over, we're not doing this anymore. But the financial incentives I hear were substantial to give these gene jabs, and people just seemed, and as I say, a lot of it is vile propaganda as well. I mean, at the beginning, I had articles published in the local press. I had an article published in the British Medical Journal, and I've had a couple of but it all just closed down then about in the summer of 2020. And the local press wouldn't take my calls, and they wouldn't answer emails, and it was just everybody just had, obviously, the incentives were huge, and the penalties likewise. I mean, I hear that the local radio stations got massive down payments, but they would have had to be repaid unless they stuck to the script. Whether that's true or not, I can't confirm. But
Well, we've seen it across the board here,
yeah,
like in the Republic, even with the closing down of businesses. That most businesses that are still running today, we quickly forget that for 2 years, private business couldn't really operate as normal. There's huge kind of warehouse debt for a lot of these businesses that are operating now. That if they were asked to repay it tomorrow morning, they wouldn't be able to do it. So you can see the financial element to the whole, not just on the medical side, but on, in other sectors of society. Even what's happened to you has happened to politicians down here speaking now on immigration, where the Gardaí are targeting them to
yeah,
send a message to other people.
yeah.
Where are you with your fight against the Medical Council now, Anne, if we take it up to date?
Well, as of this morning, I posted another 2 notices of default and dishonour to the Lady Chief Justice. It's been unbelievable for the last, well, I was suspended in September 2021 with the GMC, and I've been battling them since. As people have heard me say before, what we have exposed, and the other thing is, God sent me an angel or 2 or 3, even people who are supporting me, very knowledgeable, capable, competent people who are working. I mean, there's one person in particular who's doing a 12-hour day writing these documents. I can understand them, and I have to sign them and put my, as I say, my hand and seal to them. But this person is just absolutely tireless and completely focused. We have a paper trail going right back to the early days, which show that this whole General Medical Council thing is actually a criminal enterprise. And not only that, but you have, for example, the General Medical Council are funded by doctors' fees. They employ, I think it's 98 solicitors and 2 doctors, which kind of shows where their interests lie. I think is it something like 135 million a year of income from mainly from doctors' capitation fees. They're also funded by the Department of Health, but there's an absolute revolving door. Oh, the other thing then is that they're supposedly independent so they're the investigatory body, and then you have the Medical Practitioners Tribunal Service, who then are the judicial arm, if you like, of the Medical Council. And interestingly, during the Shipman investigation, do you remember Harold Shipman, the boy that poisoned arsenic and Old Lace? He poisoned all the old deers, and allegedly. So the recommendation was that the GMC and this Medical Practitioners Tribunal Service should be independent and should be separated. That never happened. And when you look on the Law Society's website, the solicitors and the case managers working for the judicial arm are all employed and paid by the General Medical Council. The thing is nuts. But not only that, you then have the judiciary, who in the north of Ireland the senior judges, so that I took this thing then after, there was no satisfaction with the GMC. We went to the Court of Appeal. We went to the High Court, and the High Court judge did what he had to do, which was we had 9 unrebutted affidavits and just bales of evidence. And I wasn't arguing on the science, because there's no point in arguing these people on science, because it's my science, your science, and he says, she says, all of that. We were talking about the law, the regulations, the issue of jurisdiction, the issue of what the Medical Act actually says, and about the impartiality and fairness of the whole process. So that by their rules and regulations, we won the argument. But, I knew the judge was going to find as he did, because he can't do anything else. Then at the Court of Appeal, they're all privy councillors. And the oath of the Privy Council, I should have brought it in with me because I read it out. The oath of the Privy Council is, that they swear secrecy, and the only, and it's all about the monarch, and that they swear not to divulge secrets, and yet they stand in the court and promise to treat cases without fear or favour. So which is it? Which oath? We had one of my appeal hearings. The appeal never was heard, by the way. I paid 650 quid for an appeal, which never was heard. They made the judgment, but I didn't get a chance to present my stuff. But one of them, they had a meeting over the Halloween recess last year of 2 privy councillors. Now, was that a meeting of 2 judges, or was it a privy council meeting? How could anybody know? It's insane. Now, the other thing is, I have 2 magistrates' court cases ongoing for breaking COVID, allegedly. But what happened in 2020 was, it seems that the police, the PSNI, the local police service, probably with help from the intelligence services with MI5 or MI6 or something like that, have created a fake identity. They have a person who is not me, who is a stranger to me. And that's the person that's on these summonses. You seriously could not make this stuff up. We have material evidence. And the entity in the north, and this is true of all convictions, the entity that is on the court orders doesn't exist. It's a fake entity. It doesn't exist in fact, in law, in statute. The director of the Public Prosecution Service for Northern Ireland is what's on the court orders. That entity doesn't exist. We have FOIs to prove it. This is big stuff, and that's why they have to double down. They have to keep
and sorry to interrupt you there, but how do you hope to fight through this and get justice? This sounds like, as you say, a criminal enterprise up against you.
And it's the same in the south. The Inns of Court. This all goes back to the Inner Temple in the City of London. The courts in the south are the same. These people have all taken oaths to this. The barristers have taken, and the solicitors too, have taken oaths to this. This thing which is based in the heart of the City of London. That's really where the power comes from, and as I'm quite sure you're aware, even on the global stage, this is where the real centre of government, the privy, all that goes on in the Dial and in the Parliament in London, in my opinion, is a dog and pony show. These are people acting out parts. They have no power. The decisions are made elsewhere at a much, much higher level. So to return to your question about what's the point and how are you going to get justice, well, the point is that morally, I have no choice. I get up every day and I stick my backside under my shoulders and I do whatever I have to do. I've never worked harder. I have 4 wains and I worked full time as a GP, doing 1 night on call and 1 night and 4 on call, 1 weekend and 4 on call while I was breastfeeding infants and all. I've never worked harder than I've worked the last couple of years. In fact, since the start of this, never. And I've learned so much, and it's been painful because, like, for example, I've lost my eldest son. Hasn't spoken to me in it could be 3 years now, because he works in nanotechnology and he's sponsored by the Wellcome Trust. and I can't fix that. I can't fix his rejection of what I know to be the truth. But it's hugely painful. And I don't mean to be blatant and sound miserable, because on the other side, I've made so many friends, and I've really come to appreciate the goodness in people, and just know I don't like this awake community and the truthers and that, but there are people there who that I don't even know, who have been so supportive, and that's why I didn't know beforehand, and
Hmm.
they've been so supportive and so generous with their time and all of that. So yeah.
I know you're a woman of great faith, and I just want a question to ask you is, has your faith, been tested and challenged over the last 4 years, or has it been strengthened by what you've gone through personally?
Well, I suppose what requires saying is that certainly, I mean, I am a Catholic. I've always been active in the pro-life movement since I was a teenager. And as a doctor, I was very, very active in all the various aspects of pro-life campaign. But my personal life was a mess. I certainly wasn't, you know, practicing my faith the way I should have been. Um, I, just, and I mean, it's, but this, the thing about it is that I mean, I always believe, I brought my children up, they all had their sacraments, they went to mass every Sunday, all of that stuff. But I wasn't really taking it seriously until you understand what evil is. I don't think you really understand what God is, and what that this is a spiritual battle, and this has very much been described for us, and so that um to me, it's, and I'm not trying to be in any way a goody two shoes. I'm not the biggest sinner about, but I'm in there with a good tip at that title. Do you know what I mean? I'm not,
Yeah.
never was. There's a lot of stuff that I would do differently if I had my life to live over again, but you don't get that option. You have
Hmm.
to start from where you are. So yeah, it's been. I mean, I go to mass every morning now, and we're blessed here in Derry. We've a Latin mass community, which because our beloved pontiff, it kind of has to be under the radar. And I mean, we're nearly going back to the mass rocks at this
Yeah,
stage.
I was thinking that's what I was thinking when I was thinking about you running for politics. I was thinking there'd be a great campaign trail is to go around Ireland, giving speeches at all the different mass rocks, to Daniel O'Connell style. So
There's a fella, I don't know if you know him. Is it Paul Northrup? I think he's Orthodox. He did a beautiful series in all the holy wells in Ireland. Really,
oh yeah,
really.
Paul Kingsnorth. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
Kingsnorth. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
It's just, yeah. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was great. I mean, the thing about it is this country, and I know we were talking about earlier about what's going on in Derry. I mean, this country is steeped in
Mm,
Christianity, and particularly Catholicism, uh, and up until 2 decades ago, I mean, these things weren't in question, and we now
mm,
have just a flip where you know it's incomprehensible how far we have gone. I mean, this whole, I'm terribly concerned, and I've been involved with a group in Dublin about the whole relationships and sexuality education, and you know the abortion referendum, very active, canvassed all over Donegal and the border counties at the time of the eighth referendum, and you know it just the speed with which this plan, and it is a plan. This is a plan, a depopulation, and a plan of genocide, a plan of replacing nation states with um, amorphous groups of people with no particular loyalties, and then imposing some sort of global governance. This is, and it's the speed of progress with which that has sort of gone on in recent years is horrifying. And it's just, I think a lot of people now are waking up, and
Yeah, I
Understand?
think, yeah.
If we don't stop this, this is the fight of our lives, as I keep saying. This is an existential battle for our
Mhm,
souls and the souls of our country, and for
mhm.
the lives of our children. And it's just that. It's that simple.
It is, and for every generation that brought us to here,
Totally.
back through
Yeah.
through
A
history
nation
and
is
time.
its history, its current people, and the generations yet to come. And as I
Just
say,
on that, I suppose that brings us nicely to current events in a sense, because you can see, we've gone through kind of a lot of the COVID era stuff, but for me, the number one, what we're touching on now is the number one topic in the country, and that's immigration and this unquestioning um, doubling down on specifically on refugee and asylum seekers. And we can see now that we have a UK on as bad as everything is was. We see UK government, and Rishi Sunak comes out, yesterday or one couple of days ago, saying, "Yeah, we're busing all our asylum seekers that arrive here directly into Ireland, and that's actually government policy." So
yeah,
we have a lot to fight. Are you? But I feel that maybe if we go back to the COVID era, maybe only 10 or 15% of us were of the same mindset then. I feel we're like 85% of people on the island are of the same mindset on what's going on in this arena. Do you feel the same?
it's very hard to say. I mean, you probably are aware of the shock horror headlines here in Derry. It's
Yes.
it's sort of, we are having our first in Derry ever in the whole history of this town, a first Maasai black mayor. So I don't care where our mayor's from. I don't care what color his or her skin is. I don't care if she lives from the dark side of the moon, as long as she or he has the interests of this town at heart, has history of service, and a history of understanding the culture and the the the, the heart, I suppose, of who we are as a city.
And the responsibility to carry that forward. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? As
yeah.
well, like that
This,
particular candidate has, when you peel back the layers of the story, and you see that um, she was elected in 2021, but like she has a sister and a brother who are very high profile politicians in Kenya. So it's
yeah.
a
I mean, my understanding is that uh, she's sort of putting herself as a refugee, an asylum seeker, somebody who came to these shores. You know, again, from what I have seen and read, that is does not seem to be true. She comes from what seems like a very quite privileged background. Her brother is one of the members of parliament there. I think other family members are involved in
yeah,
politics in
he's
her
a
home, and,
senator.
and I mean, a very massive, opulent wedding with six bridesmaids and six best men, locally here. And again, I mean, I don't deny her any of that. This is who she is. But to sort of play the I was a poor little refugee and here I am, and Derry people were so kind to me. That seems to me to be manifestly untrue. Now again, she was co-opted onto the council I had actually resigned by that time, so that would have been
Is she a
late
member of the
2021.
SDLPN?
She's SDLP, yes. Sinead McLaughlin was parachuted up into the MLA place in Stormont, and this woman Lillian Shioni Barr, I may not be pronouncing that properly, was co-opted into the council, and then she was elected. She kept her
Yeah.
seat. To the Derry people, again, it's a bit like Leo Varadkar, our first openly gay, non-native person, calling the Irish people homophobes and racists after we elected him as our Taoiseach.
Hmm.
So it smacks a bit of that, where she then was the Derry people voted for her. And she's now calling us racists and terrorists because some people are objecting to the fact that councillors who have served for, who were also in the race, there was supposed to be some sort of a
Well, that's
democratic
what.
process.
Yeah, so that's was Jason Barr, who was an
Yeah,
SDLP councillor who resigned today. That
yeah,
was his argument, was the whole selection process for
yeah, yeah.
the
Well,
thing was basically ignored, and
it's scandalous. And Shauna Cusack, again, I have no time for the SDLP. I have no time for them. They are woke central. They have no morality except the next election. The only thing that they care about is their positions. And Colm Eastwood is a disgrace in Parliament. I've written to him on I don't know how many subjects. He doesn't go to any of the important debates. He refuses to answer emails. They're but people like Shauna Cusack have decades of service as SDLP councillors to the people of this town, and she now has been excluded. You know, so that and I think people are calling it white privilege. It's insane, absolutely insane. If they had some semblance of a proper democratic selection process, it would have been different. But this is obviously just it's critical. It's cultural Marxism. It's critical race theory, right in the heart of our wee town, the town we loved so well. And again, I wish the woman no ill.
no, I don't. And to be
It's
honest
not
with you,
about
like,
that.
yeah, no, it isn't about that. And we've seen plenty of cases of it down here, where especially, we had a very controversial Green Party Dublin City mayor that was, similar circumstances, I would say, in my opinion. But where do you like? I suppose I'm very. Anytime I go to the north or cross over an invisible border, let's put it like that, I'm very. I always get the
The
sense the
alleged
last few
border,
years that
Jerry.
the alleged border, and I have to be very careful talking to a woman that was handing out the unpublished in UCD in the 70s as well.
Yeah, yeah, sure was.
What was I going to say? Was basically, I often feel that Northern Ireland feels more like what we'd say as Northern Ireland. It feels more Irish today than the South. Do you like? There's
Yeah, I think
whatever.
yeah, I think we escaped the worst of the COVID lunacy because northern people of all backgrounds don't trust their government. They hate and detest government. We are, innately suspicious of anything that comes from those people. So I think that was kind of protective, and also, I mean, certainly in my experience over this last 4 years, the good God-fearing Presbyterian people have actually been much, much more resilient and were much quicker, to see through this satanic globalist, mess than we. And I mean,
Mhm.
parties like Sinn Féin, we know that Jerry Adams. I mean, I was horrified to see pictures. Jerry Adams and Martin McGuinness were in Davos in 2004, and I fell out with Sinn Féin over the pro-life issue, but I also majorly fell out with them over the Good Friday Agreement. Now, I had absolutely was for the ceasefires. Our young people were not being sent out, they were going out or being sent out, whatever, um, to fight with guns, the best equipped army in the world at that time. It was just insane. So that they were just going into jail or in coffins, and nothing was being achieved. And we know now, in retrospect, I mean, this whole thing was staged. The whole of Irish politics has been again distorted by bankers. But there's a brilliant book that you need to read, the chapter on Ireland on. It's called The Secret History of the First World War, and the way that the banking elites, you need to read it. The chapter on
Mhm.
Ireland shows that all of the sectarianism on this island at the time of the start of the First World War was to give the British a pretext for if the thing didn't kick off in Serbia and Austria-Hungary. that they could start a civil war in Ireland and say, look what the Kaiser, they let the Kaiser arm the UVF and the Republicans. The German guns on both sides. The
Hmm.
UVF got, I think, 30,000 of them. We got 1,500 or something of obsolete ones. But that was all done with
I
the
do.
yeah. And then they sent, what they did then was they sent the UVF, the poor wee critters of good, loyal, monarchists in the north and Redmond's volunteers in the south, sent them all off to Flanders together to Belgium to get ploughed into the muck there. And it
Hmm.
was the bankers that did it. This was the secret elite that actually ruled. And it's the same playbook today. They have all the politicians, all the diplomats, all the media, all of that absolutely under control. So I can't remember how we got onto that, but
Yeah,
people
no, no, no.
need to look at that and understand that all that went on in this island, and maybe even before that, was absolutely controlled at it, and they call us, sect. They tried to pretend that this was a sectarian war. It was nothing to do with it. It was about nationhood, about faith, fatherland, and as a sacred uh, commitment to our home, you know.
Yeah.
And it's the same today. This is our home, and we have a duty to keep it like that.
Well, yeah, and what I'd say, just to follow on that, if you take the the media element of that, what you've just described about history, and it bears a point that Noam Chomsky, no hero of COVID, but just let me, before people start giving out to me. But one of the factors, one of the things he said that's true about manufacturing consent. I think he was asked recently in the last year or two. Are things worse or better now? And he says, oh, they're much better now. It was much easier to manufacture consent in history, and I kind of tend to go along with that in the sense that there was a smaller number. Platforms like this weren't available for whether you might think we're truthful and I believe are not. It is There's a gazillion methods people can um get information nowadays, and they are doing it. So
Yeah.
I think, as much as we look at the light of mainstream media, whether it's RT or the newspapers, the vast majority of people are getting most of their information from other sources. We might agree with some of the sources and we might disagree, but I'd say that there is that element.
I don't know about the vast majority either, Jerry. I think a lot of people, the box is on in the corner all day, every day, and it as we know, there's there's this is sort of programming that the buzzwords are there, and I agree, and that's why the censorship of the internet is a priority, and the closing down of free speech and hate speech laws, and the all of that shadow banning and censorship. I mean, I in the south, I'm quite sure it's similar. And they have a regiment of the British Army, the 77th Brigade. Warehouses full of people fact checking and debunking and AI bots.
Hmm.
Arguing. The that's why it's so important to use these platforms while we have them. Um, I do think we're going to have to ditch the technology and go back to you
Well,
know
step back from to
yeah.
to use it as a tool rather than be a tool. We're being used as a tool of it, or almost.
We
Listen,
certainly
and
need
we're
we certainly need alternative ways of connecting. Yeah,
yeah, and much more authentic, much more in the real world as well.
yeah.
We're rolling at an hour there, and I suppose I'm going to wrap it up with a last question to you. And one thing is, to people out there who are in the general area of Donegal who want to get involved with an authentic candidate, um, and campaigns or post or do whatever, I'd encourage them to reach out to Anne or her team, to give her a hand, to get involved on the ground. Because I know, Anne, you always have, yeah, a lot going on, but I definitely would encourage people to do that. So I'll leave it over to you, Anne, as to maybe talk a little bit about yeah, what the future holds for you, the immediate future.
Um, God knows. I have absolutely no idea. I'm not joking. I mean, I don't particularly, I wouldn't work. I don't want to go back to work, but I'm not letting the GMC tell me that they're
Mhm,
not allowing me to work. I don't, I don't
mhm,
want my license back particularly. But it's tragic. For example, one of the leaders of the COVID cult here in Derry, a local GP, he was chair of the British Medical Association and never off the radio and airwaves. A friend of mine were telling me that they couldn't, they arranged to go away for a weekend for their wedding anniversary, and they couldn't get the child. The child was grizzly, and they didn't want to leave it with the mammy, their granny, whenever she wasn't well. And they couldn't get the child seen and assessed, and they eventually, in despair, booked a private appointment with this individual. 75 quid to have the child looked at, and another £15 for uh, a prescription. No, I believe these people. That, you know, to me, it just that it just beggars belief, and that is going on here is a travesty. It's so unfair to people that have, they've been told that they have that there will be a health service for them when they need it, and that's no longer true. So certainly, I would like. There's two things that are my passions. One, probably more important, we'll do that, is to provide, is to be able to get an alternative health system that treats people with respect and uses modalities of treatment that are safe and maybe not mainstream, but that people will be able to access that. The second thing, I do believe the education system, we need to be able to, if this relationship and sexuality education is going through, where they're teaching self-pleasuring to nursery school children and the first sexual encounter to 9-year-olds. If that is going into the schools, we need to take our children home, and we really need an alternative way of supporting people who are homeschooling and maybe in groups. I was talking to uh, what's his name? He's an English Lord Monckton, Christopher Monckton. He's Viscount, I think he is. He's a physicist. He's a good climate scientist, and he was telling me that in England they have a system, ready to roll out at quite a low cost, where they can support home educating groups of parents. Until such times as our schools are safe to send our children to. I think that that certainly is a big factor. So the council thing is what it is. If I'm elected, I promise I'll do my best. It's not going to change anything. Politics,
I
as we've
think yeah,
already
no.
discussed, aren't going
Mhm,
to change anything. But and the medical thing is it's ongoing. I'm going to keep telling people that the last time I stood as an MLA was really as a pretext to get leaflets about the dangers of the jags, and particularly in children. And in Derry, and I think this is true of a lot of Ireland, the working class people are wide awake,
yeah.
wide awake. In the Craigan, the Bog, the Moor, Gallia, Shantallow, Irish Street, the wee Protestant estates, wide awake. And I'd
Well,
be going to
they're the first people to feel the implementation of the policies of the they're the first, whether it's
yeah,
on immigration, COVID, whatever.
yeah,
They are the health service. One quick
yeah.
question before we go in, if and this is just kind of curious to know this, if you had a kid and they were in need of an emergency room, would you choose a hospital in Northern, if you had a choice and all this, would you choose an emergency room in Northern Ireland or the Republic?
Um, I
Guns
would,
to your head.
it would need to be something very serious before I'd cross the threshold of any hospital in this island,
Mm,
unfortunately, and it
mm,
pains me to say that.
mm,
Um, I mean, I don't have any great experience of emergency rooms in either jurisdiction, thanks be to God. I'm disgustingly healthy, even though I'm
mhm,
an old one. But it's just it's people aren't, I know, in either jurisdiction are not being treated an evidence-based an empathetic and in a way that puts their informed consent, their bodily autonomy, and their rights, the things that they should expect from any doctor who has taken a Hippocratic oath or taken, who's offering themselves as a physician or there's standards that and I'm afraid we've certainly the last 4 years we've a lot of it needs that whole thing needs reformed as well. In University College Dublin in the 70s and 80s, we had to do a course in medical ethics. And if you didn't pass it, you didn't get your degree. And I just looking back at the time, we sort of thought it was funny, but it teaches you how to, look at the greater good for the, and balance risk benefit and all of that. So the other thing, and I hate to have to do this, Jerry, but because I'm supposed to do it at the beginning and I always forget. I have to do a wee disclaimer because of this putrid society that we live in now. I have to say that all of the things I have said here are my informed opinions, and I'm a doctor, but I'm not your doctor. And the audience are advised they need to go and use their discernment and do their own critical thinking and do their own research. And it never is my intention to conspire or to offend or to hurt anybody. And I think it's a sad indictment that a doctor has to say that. But I mean, I've been told, and as I say, I think everybody actually should start.
Well, no, yeah, well, everybody has to do it.
Yeah.
But look, I know, and there's a number of prominent people who are in South and North in being targeted, are in the justice system, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
and are in current fights. And every word you say on every platform you say it is being gone through. You said there's those 98 lawyers or whatever, a proportion of them go through podcasts like this and other, methods of communication to try and trip you up. So no, I'm glad you said it. I should have said it myself at the beginning.
Well, I think it's certainly worth for everybody, and I'm talking now to the wider audience there, that if you're, I think it is just worth closing that door to the lawfare that is going on against people who are opposing the narrative. And yeah, we're the 99%, but the 1% can do an awful lot of damage because they're malevolent. And so that's it. But yeah, it's been a great pleasure having the yarn. And as I say, it's very kind of you to ask people to give me a hand. It's very, very welcome. You'll find me on Twitter at Dr. Anne, at Facebook, and my email address is dranne.derry@protonmail.com if anybody wants to get in touch. And yeah, looking
Brilliant.
forward to the upcoming challenges. So
hopefully the next time we talk, you'll be a county councillor, and that'll be another great journey for you. And just thanks a million for your time, and I really appreciate all you've done, and all you've done and all you're doing for the country, and the help you give to people, because you're always, when there's a protest on or somebody needs to speak, you always offer the helping hand. So I hope that you're successful in your candidacy in Donegal. So anyway, thanks, Anna. We'll end the stream there.
Great stuff.